Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, your host and the founder and CEO of E=Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices across different generations, industries, backgrounds, and functions. A team's job is to deliver business results. The role of the leader is to empower, inspire, and enable the people and team to deliver those results. Now, there's a repeatable formula that the best leaders use, and that is to the E3 leadership code: express plus engage plus execute, powered by emotions. However, how each leader approaches this and uses this code is unique because there's no one way, there's no mold for leadership. It's about showing up as yourself. And that's why we wanted to highlight all of these diverse voices of leadership. And so, as we meet the leaders, we'll uncover what drives them, we'll explore their unique leadership style, their values, and how they've adapted over time. So, before we get started, let's make this very interactive. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, where you're dialing in from. If you want, share your LinkedIn profile as well, because this is a perfect opportunity to network. And we have a question for you to start. Have you ever heard of fractional consulting? Because we're going to talk about that a bit today with our guest. And so let me welcome our guest today, Marie Almeida. She's got over 15 years at the forefront of tech recruitment in companies like Red Hat, Damon, and now Talent. Marie has truly distinguished herself as a leader who not only knows the industry, but also shapes it, quite honestly. Marie and I immediately connected due to our extroverted nature, but more importantly, for our aligned passion for matching individuals with purpose-driven, people-first companies where they can truly excel. Today, Marie leads the charge at Talent Professional Services, where she harnesses her profound expertise to pioneer talent management strategies that go beyond conventional borders. Her commitment to fostering a culture of excellence, innovation, and diversity make her not just a leader, but a visionary in her field. So join me in welcoming Marie, a steadfast advocate for integrity and accountability, and a strategic partner to help business leaders seeking impactful outcomes through empowered talent. So, Marie, I gave the really high level stuff. Thank you for joining. So excited to have you here because whenever you and I get started and talking, we're like blah blah blah. But I'm excited for the audience to learn more about what you're doing and what your journey is. So let's first start. Tell us how you got here and what you're doing.
Thanks, Kathy. That was a very humbling intro. I hope I can meet up to it. I do want to say that you're very generous with the 15 years. It's a little longer than that, but we won't go into that. We won't talk about that, right? But yeah, I'm Marie Almeida. I am the director of internal talent acquisition at Talent. I also sell our services. Um, I started in my journey into IT, the IT world, the technical world, at a very young age. I was one of the first people in high school that took a basic course. Um, and my teacher then, Mr. Terrell, said, "Marie, you can do this. You can be a computer programmer." But back then, as standards were, women were not in the tech field. It was not.
Mhm.
It was frowned upon. It wasn't the right thing to do at that time. I ended up marrying a computer programmer. So I stayed in the tech world. We talked a lot about what he did every night. We talked about it at dinner, etc. Back in the mid 90s, I found my world fall apart. He ended up leaving. Within 6 months, my house was in foreclosure. My car was being repoed. It was just a bad time. And I was trying to raise three kids under six, right? So no job, etc. I had to pull myself up by the bootstraps, figure out how to do this. I ended up going to work just to make some benefits. Met a person there who said, "We need to find you a date." So here's a funny story. So he did, found me a date. I went and I bought a used outfit from the secondhand store and went to the local, Havana, the club, and watched this GQ person come out of a brand new Jeep. And I just started laughing. I'm like, this is crazy. Here I am, 35 years old. This kid was like 25 years old and eyelashes out to here. And we thought it was funny. But we became fast friends that day. He happened to own a staffing firm with another partner in New York City. He told me what he did. I said, I've got a few people for you because that was our world. It was all
Hmm.
technology. We placed somebody together and he sent me a check. And I was like, wow, I have money in my hand, right? And I called him. I was like, what is this check for? He goes, that's a referral fee, Marie. You did it. You helped me place this person. Send me more people. So I did. He kept sending me checks. I kept doing it. And eventually I ended up going to work for him, which is a really hard decision, going into Manhattan every day with 3 young children.
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
was a really hard decision to make, but I did it. And I thrived. It just was a great time in the market. I was hiding money, because now I'm going through a divorce, right? I was supposed to be making no money. So it was a very interesting time, but I became an expert in the field because if I was going to go to work, I was going to leave my children, I was going to do this the right way. So I did, and stayed in the field. I stayed in the field for a very long time. At one point, a little bit of burnout happened, and that's when I went to the corporate side. Red Hat tapped me on the shoulder, which was really great learning for me because I learned about the inside, the nuances of hiring and what an applicant tracking system does and what happens to your resume when it goes forward and it gets in there. And we can talk about that if anybody's interested because the back end of this system is very interesting and it's not like anybody thinks it is.
yep.
Um, and then I went to Demont, and when that kind of started coming to an end, I was already at Talon for 10 years. Talon called me up. This was my love. These people were my family. And I just went back to one of the greatest, I think, one of the greatest staffing firms out there right now.
That's
And that's how I landed at Talon.
excellent. So you've seen a lot of leaders, and especially in the tech world, come
Mhm,
through and succeed, some not succeed. I'm going
mhm.
to just kind of start with the one big question out there. What do you think some of the attributes are of the leaders that have succeeded?
So I think in the tech, and I can speak to other worlds, but I want to stay in the tech world because that's really what I know. Um, I think it was them being authentic leaders and them pulling people through. I had one leader who said, "Let me weave you through this. Let me show you what this looks like. Let me explain this to you." And I think when someone comes across to you as authentic and humble, I think it's easier to jump through hoops for them, right? So if you're at a meeting and you've got a leader saying, "I want you to do this and this and this and this and this," you turn off.
Yeah,
But if you have a leader that says, "Hey, listen, I've got some deliverables that I have to meet. I need your help," right? Here's where my weakness is. Here's where your strength is. How can we work together? It just sounds different.
yeah,
It comes across different and it feels different. And for me, as a direct report, that's how I want to engage my leader. I want to help my leader get better. I want my leader to help me get better. So
yeah.
I think it's all about approach, it's about humility, and it's about authenticity. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that stand out to me.
Well, and I set that up as a softball a little bit, but I knew that was one of the things that you and I connected on almost immediately was the power of being authentic,
Right.
right? And so often, I think people think there's a mold that you have to fit, and
Hmm.
when you're going on that interview, like, oh, I have to show up
Hmm.
like this, and quite honestly, it's really about knowing yourself and being true to who you are and presenting that, correct?
Right. I agree with that. And I think most interviews go like this, right? You usually have a 30-minute conversation. That's the first thing that happens. That's really a cultural fit. So before you're even talking about who you are technically, basically
Mhm.
they know who you are technically because your resume has already fit the skill set for them to call you. But what you want to get across in those first 30 minutes, and 30 minutes goes by fast. We know that, right? We're already 10 minutes in here, right?
Yep.
You want to get across your authenticity. You want to get across how you show up if it's a leadership position as a leader. You want to get across who you are as a person because that's what you're bringing every day to this job.
Yep.
So if you go on this 30-minute interview and you sit up straight and they say, "Tell me about yourself," and you start telling them, "Well, I'm a tech engineer and I know VSAM and I know Kubernetes," that's not really what they want to hear right then and there. They really want to hear from you as a person. You can interject your technical skills in there, but they really want to hear from you as a person, whether you're interviewing for a customer service position or a CIO position. That's really what that first 30 minutes is about.
Yeah, and I've often, being a chief people officer, talking to other people and saying like, I want to hear your story. Tell me how you got here. And it's interesting because I asked you your journey, right? How you got here.
Right.
It was a
Right.
very personal story,
Yes, it is personal.
and I'm going to remember that. more
Right,
so
right, right,
than
right.
if you had read me the resume like I was hired to go do this and then I went to Red Hat. I mean, I would forget a lot of it, right? It's
Sure,
how do we connect
sure, sure,
tells me a lot.
sure. I interviewed a senior VP for marketing one time, marketing. And I said, "Tell me about yourself." I said, "Just the same thing." And I felt her reading her biography to me.
Mhm.
And I liked her. I liked her on paper. I liked her when I finally softened her up a little bit and got to know her. I liked her. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to pass you along to the president of this company. If you show up like this, you're not going to get the job." And I,
Mm.
and she said, "What?" She was like surprised at my words. And I said, "You were reading a script. I have no idea who you are by reading a script. The only way I got to know you was by digging in a little deeper. President's not going to do that. He doesn't have the time."
Yeah.
So again, if you don't show up as you can't show up as you every day at the job.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, most of these first interviews now are on Zoom like this, right?
They are. Most of them are video interviews. In fact, 99% of them go all the way through video, depending on where the person is located, et cetera, et cetera. But that first one, it's hard to come through on video, right? There's a little bit of planning involved, right? If you and I jumped on this video now, and my camera, all you saw was this,
Yeah.
you would be like a little disenchanted, right? Like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. So there's a little bit of practice that you need to do beforehand. But again, you can practice all you want. You still need to be yourself when you show up.
Yep. I agree. And not have and it's easy because I'm thinking back now, I'm like, so I read your intro and it was a little bit I had my notes, right? And that's it's sometimes easier. You're like, oh, I have the notes, it'll be fine.
Right,
But you
right,
really can't. You need to be having more of this dialogue back and
right,
forth and be prepared
right.
for that.
Yes. And I always say, have your resume up. You should have two screens. Have your resume up so you can, you can go back to it. But really the conversation, especially that first one. And I want to go one step further if I
Sure.
may, Kathy. You have to be you have to be interested in the job as well. So
Mm,
that dialogue is so important because at the end of the day, you need to go to that job every day. You're spending a lot of time away from your family, away from the things you love, away from your pickleball, right? And you're going to work every day. It has to be something that you want to do.
yeah. I think that's so powerful. And I've talked to people about it before. It's a two-way interview, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
You're looking to see, is this culture where I want to be? Does
That's
this
right.
fit who I am?
That's right. That's
And
right.
and a lot of what we do with a lot of our clients is also help them understand who they are, right? So we do
Mhm.
a E3 leadership profile, but it's what are your values? What are your non-negotiables, right? How do you like to show up?
Right.
Because to show up authentically, you have to know this.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You have to know what you want,
Yep,
right? Where you, how you want to show up at a company where you want to be seen, but you want them to show up for you as well.
yep,
It's a two-way street, and it has to be a two-way street. And
for
I think some people lose sight of that, especially if you're out of work for a little while, and you're I don't want to use the word desperate, but you're getting concerned, right? Um, there's a lot around that. We can talk about that another time. There's a lot around not working and not
sure.
feeling like you're valued, right? But that comes through too. That little bit of desperation comes through too. And you don't want to take a job for the just for the sake of taking a job.
Yeah,
It's not going to
agreed. So and kind of that there's a lot of people looking I know at the
happen.
moment and it's scary and I've spoken to a lot of folks and they're like oh this is uncomfortable and a lot of things we've talked a little bit. Are you seeing a trend a lot more to fractional? And I think what we should do is first explain what fractional roles are.
Sure.
So are you up for sharing that with the
Sure.
team?
Do you want to explain that or do you want me to explain that?
Why don't you? You're more of an expert here.
So, fractional consulting, it is just what it says. You're working as a consultant a fraction of the time. Some people don't need a 40-hour a week job, right? Depending on where they are in their career, especially these higher level folks, the CIOs, the CTOs, the higher level CEOs, right? There's a lot of companies out there that need that CEO, CTO, CIO expertise, but they don't need it for 40 hours a week. So it's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is a lot of interest in this specific fractional consulting. The the clients love it, and a lot of the people that I speak with that are out of work say yes. And I can tell you, I talked to a gentleman yesterday who we got to talking about. I first time I met him, who he was, what he does. High level CIO has built 100 people teams, did some really great work. Talk to me a little bit about what he likes to do. And I said, you need to be a fractional consultant because you need to speak. You need to be at speaking engagements. You need to write a book. This is your passion.
Yep.
Being a CIO is what you do, right?
Mhm.
Fractional CIO, he would be able to make his money, still feel his value, and have that time to pursue or explore other opportunities. So it's a benefit for the company because they're not paying a $500,000 salary, benefits, PTO, uh, LTIs, RSUs. They're not doing any of that. They're bringing in a consultant, paying an hourly fee, and getting 20 hours of really good work out of someone. So we're seeing a lot more of this fractional work. If you're
Yeah,
asking
because
a better
you gave
question.
me a stat earlier, right? That
Yeah, I actually have it up. I just heard from a gentleman who does this is all he does is fractional work, and he said I'm gonna quote him because he's a great guy. I'd estimate we're seeing fractional interest outnumber actual jobs by a ratio of 60 to 70 to 1.
wow.
So think about that. 60 to 1, there's an interest, right, in this fractional consulting from clients. I don't think he's talking about from candidates, right? But I can tell you that the few that I've spoken with about fractional consulting have expressed enormous interest in that.
Interesting.
So I would think it would be on the other side as well. But that's a great number. So those that are out of work, if anyone is on this call that's out of work, we should be talking about how we can turn you into a fractional consultant where you can make equally as much money and still touch grass.
Yeah, and I think the important thing here is sometimes people hear consultant and they're like, but I think it is the fractional C level, right? It is CROs, CMOs, CIOs. I mean, all of those roles have
Right.
a position or as fractional.
Right, for the most part. For the most part, right? And a lot of folks say fractional consulting. Does that mean I have to get my own LLC? Do I need my own? This is. Do I have to talk to my accountant? How am I going to pay the taxes? What am I going to do about benefits? Like, there's so much wrapped around that that it's easier to just say, you know what? I'm going to stay home in my robe today and not even think about it, right?
But
So
the talent actually helps people in.
absolutely, absolutely. We can place you. We can pay for you. We can give you the benefits. We can, take your taxes out for you. We can do all of that for you, to take the pain away from that or the discomfort,
Yeah,
really.
and that was something I learned because I knew you had done recruiting because you do a lot of you help a lot of people trying to find their ideal role. I've been on one of your sessions. You have a community for folks,
Mhm,
and I
mhm.
had it in my mind. I'm like, oh, you do recruiting for full time positions, but then
Right.
to realize that you're doing it for this fractional consulting as well.
Yes.
That's
Well, the
amazing.
core of Talon's business is putting contractors to work. It's really not full time. It really isn't. The core of our business and where we shine and what we do is we bring consultants to companies, right? Whether they're fractional or full time. So the difference, right? Fractional is 20 hours a week, right? It that can be broken down any way. Full
Yeah,
time is 40 hours a week. That's the
yeah,
only difference. When I say full time, I don't mean a direct hire position.
right.
Okay. So that's really the core of Talon's business. We find great talent, we pair them with great companies, and they go in as a consultant. They
Yeah,
get paid an hourly fee. The company pays us an hourly fee.
yeah,
That's really what our meat and potatoes is, and that's what we do well. We've honed that, right? We do help with full time hiring because a lot of folks need a full time job. And I found you said 15, I'm going to go in my 30 years of working. Wow. That I want to give a little back now. I want to do a little philanthropy. I want to make sure that all of these folks that have helped me with my business and bring consultants on, if they're out of work, they can come to me,
mm,
feel comfortable, and we could talk about the best way to get them their next gig, whether it's fractional, whether it's full time, whether it's consulting.
yeah. No, that's excellent. And it's there's a lot of talent out there, but up until this point there was a huge demand,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yeah.
the demand has changed. So now the competition is a lot steeper
Right.
for folks in trying to look for those roles and you
Right.
need to stand out.
Right. Exactly.
How much when you think about it and you're looking at leaders, how much of it is technical knowledge versus really being able to lead organizations to drive change and those people skills?
I absolutely believe it depends on the role. Let's talk about leadership roles. I think your leadership is more important than your technical skills. If you've come up through the tech world, you know those technical skills. Do you need to stay on top of technology? Yes, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
use a word here, Kubernetes. I had no idea what that was until about a year ago when people started talking about that. Can I code in Kubernetes? Can I test in Kubernetes? No, I can't, but I know about it. So when you think about leadership and you think about a leader, they need to show up right authentic. They need to be able to motivate. They need to be able to work with their team, and they need to have at least a knowledge of what the technical skills are,
Yeah.
right? In order to drive business. So depending on the level, I think leadership is more important, but that's my opinion. I don't know if that's every company's opinion.
Well, and I think you're right. I talk to a lot of different people, and it does vary.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's about delivering results,
True.
right?
That's right.
And I think sometimes we get caught up in the day to day to say, "Oh, leadership, you just want to worry about the people." No, at bottom line, we got to deliver
That's
results.
right. That's right. There has to be some delivery, right? But if you're leading your people correctly, I have to say it, if you're leading your people correctly, they're going to deliver for you.
Yes,
Right? So depending again on your level, you're not going to get in the weeds. You're not going to roll up your sleeves and say, "Okay, let me get under the desk and plug this computer in and make sure it works."
correct.
You might on a Saturday morning, you might do that, right? But for the most part, that's not what you're doing. You're trusting your people to roll up their sleeves and plug in that computer.
Yep,
I think in order to trust those people to do that, they need to trust you. And
yep.
that's where the leadership comes in versus the management.
Yeah, and we talk a lot. The E3 leadership code is really about your job as a leader, expressing a vision. Where are we going? You own the strategy, the vision,
Right.
right? And then you got to make sure that you got everyone on board.
Right.
How do they get on board? Because this is the authentic part, right?
Exactly.
Because I'm assuming, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's one thing to treat people the way you want to be treated. It's a lot better to treat them the way they want to be treated.
That's exactly right. Right. And that's
And
hard to do because you don't know that often, right? You don't know how they want to be treated. So that's why that's where the humility comes in, more even than the authenticity, right? That's when you're sitting in a meeting with your direct reports and you're saying, "Help me help you. Help me understand what you need in order to get your job done."
yeah,
Right? That's to me, that's humility. That's saying, "I don't know what you need," right? Give it to me so that I can give it back to you. And I think it's really important. But you're right. I think you need to be able to drive strategy as well. You need to go to the board. You need to go to the advisors. You need to go to the venture capitalists and say, "Okay, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're building. Now give me money to do it so I can go hire the right people to make it happen." So
yeah,
it's a twofold position, right? Because you have to drive the execution of whatever your strategy is, but you also have to have the vision for your strategy.
yeah.
Right? That's why they make the money. That's why they make the big bucks, right? That's because it's a lot,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I think that consulting side of it, I was talking to someone earlier today and we were talking about how I think we were looking at a bell curve, right, for leadership and how like 15% probably should be in the role, if we're honest, right?
Hmm.
15% do it naturally. They're really good at it, or
Right,
they know they can't do it alone. And then you got the middle section that needs help to learn, right? They
right,
have the opportunity to learn. But we were talking about the 15%, and I love your point of view on this. But they do tend to be more humble. They realize that they can't do it alone
right, right,
and they ask for the help. And it was
right.
funny because we'll do a leadership survey, like an assessment of 360.
Hmm.
Most of the best leaders will rate themselves lower than their teams.
Right. And there's your humility, right? That's where you need to be humble, right? That's where you're saying, help
Yeah.
me help you, right? And I think that that's important. And I think I don't know that it's something you can learn as much as it's inherent in you. I think you can draw it out even more and you can work on it and you can, ruminate on it and watch podcasts on how to be that person. But I think it has to be inherent. I think you have to know it's there and you have to figure out how to draw it out, right?
Yeah. And I think we all have it in us. But to
I
your
think so
point,
too.
you
Right.
have to figure out how to draw it out.
Right, right. And still show up as your authentic self.
Yeah.
right? So it's a work in progress. And I think some leaders may lose that. They're saying, okay, I've reached my pinnacle, right? Here I am, I'm the CIO, do it my way or don't do it my way. And I'm saying, well, maybe that's not the best approach, right? Maybe the approach is to look inward, see what you could do better, and then bring that, because that's where your authenticity comes through. So
Yeah.
it's a tough role, but it's definitely doable. And I think as a recruiter, and having been a recruiter for so long, I you can pull that out of people, and you could figure out what that is, what that je ne sais quoi is, and then help coach them to bring that to the interview, and then coach them even more to bring that to their job every day. And I think, Kathy, that's where you come in, right? That's where your leadership expertise comes in, because your job, as we started 30 minutes ago talking about this, is pulling that out of people and
Right.
weaving that through who they are as a leader, right? As a strategist and as a technical person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right?
It
You got to
sure
do
is.
all of it, and you got to show up. I always say, like, the glue is coming with your heart, right?
Right.
And being,
There you
and
go.
then because when you connect with someone, that
Mhm.
really does allow you to make mistakes, and
Sure.
people will forgive you.
Sure, exactly. As long as you're humble about it and you're walking into that next meeting saying, I made a mistake. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how that doesn't happen again.
Yeah,
Right. And I don't mean take it on the chin every time.
correct.
Sometimes you have to go into a meeting and say, you made a mistake. Let's figure out how that doesn't happen again. But if you do that every time, it's gonna just flow off their backs. If they know that when you're taking accountability, then they'll take accountability.
Well, I think it's also how they explain it, right? So if
Right.
someone makes a mistake, there's a way to say you screwed up,
Right.
or
Right.
hey, here's what happened, here's the impact, here's what I needed to do differently.
Right. Right.
Two different ways to approach that. And
That's right. Unlike my mother who threw the shoe up the stairs down the hall and hit me in the head with it. Don't do that again. That's not a good way. It's not a good management style at all.
so, what, I mean, you've given a lot of advice already, Marie, but what are some things that people can do if they're really struggling and trying to find that opportune job?
Sure. There's a lot you can do. LinkedIn is just the thing right now, right? So make sure that on LinkedIn you're showing up the way you are, right? Make sure that when you're on LinkedIn, there's a 411 rule, right? Make sure you're doing 4 things a week on LinkedIn. You're liking something, you're reposting something, you're commenting on something, and you're posting something yourself. I think that that's really important to do, because that is what changes the algorithms in LinkedIn a little bit, and you get seen a little bit more, right? So Kathy, let's say you're looking for someone, a consultant for your team. If you see someone commenting often on LinkedIn, you're going to go, I want to talk to that person,
Yeah,
right? It's kind of how
absolutely.
you and I met. I want to have a conversation with that
Hmm.
person because they're saying some things that resonate with whatever job I need them to do. So you definitely want to do that. You want to make sure that your resume matches your LinkedIn profile. If I told you how many candidates I've looked at that their resume does not match their profile, and right away that gives you a feeling of disingenuous, I don't know the word, disingenuousness.
Yep. Hmm.
Somebody look that up. Let me know if that's the right word. But
Yeah.
you're right, because that's a big one. But you don't want to have a recruiter have that feeling right from the beginning,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then on that first call, be yourself. Be who you are. You don't They know your technical skills already because they've seen it on your resume. They didn't call you for a Kubernetes job if you don't have that word on your resume anywhere, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing. Make sure that you have your skill set on there, but make sure you could speak to other things when you get on that call. I think those are the first few things that I could think about right away. I think getting seen. Ralph is asking me to repeat that 411 rule.
Yep.
So it's 4 things on LinkedIn, Ralph. Okay. So you want to do 4 things on LinkedIn a week. Okay. Post something, comment on something, like something, and repost something. There's your 4 things. Okay. So when you post something, you can think about, what did you do this weekend? You dug a trench because you needed a French drain in your backyard, right? You've got the time to do it because you're not working. There's your story. Write about it, right? Go to AI, figure out, let them give you some ideas. Don't just regurgitate what AI gives you. Give some ideas, and then talk about how that made you a better person for when someone hires you, right? You learned patience, you learned measurements, you learned, right? To make sure you get your children involved. Whatever that learning is, whether it's personal or business, get it out there. Because again, there's your authentic self. That's who
Yep.
you are, right? So you're telling a story. When you're out of work, you want to still be able to tell that story about what you've been doing, right? In that
Yep.
time that you're no longer a CIO or a CTO or an architect, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember I took a break. I was off for about 10 months. And I remember some people be like, oh, you can't have a gap. And I'm like, this is a gift. And I'm taking this gift
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
I'm going to improve myself. I'm going to
Exactly.
learn it, learn more about things. And it's an
Right.
opportunity.
Right, right. It is an opportunity, but you need to be able to tell that story. You're welcome, Ralph, by the way. You need to be able to tell that story because I just placed, not just a couple of months ago, I placed a VP of data architecture who was out of work for a year. And when I got the resume, it was perfect for the job, but now I need to explain this gap to my client. Again, you earn the trust of your client. So the client knows you're not going to BS them, excuse
Right.
that expression, right? But I had to say to this person, I need you to tell me what you've been doing for the last 11 months. So she did. She was taking care of an ill mom,
Mm-hmm.
right, until her mother passed. She joined a STEM program. She started helping women, young girls, to become technical. She did something with 4-H. I don't remember what that was, but she was able to list all of those things out. So when I sent her resume to the client, I sent that paragraph that she sent me, and the client said, wow, she really made good use of her time. And I love the fact that she's working with young girls. Let me interview her.
Right.
And she got the job. She got the job. She's thriving in this job, and she was out of work for a year. Telling that story, that internal story, is really important. Taking those breaks are important. If you find yourself out of work, take a break. You don't have to look for a job 8 hours a day. When are you going to be out of work again? When are you going to have that time that there's nothing in your inbox? Take a break. It's okay.
Yep. That was exactly like I would put it in my structure in the morning. I would sit down because I'm a morning person, do a little bit of the work, and then I had on my to-do list read a book because I hadn't read a
Right.
book in, you know, decades.
Exactly. Take a walk. Take the dog to the beach. Do something to fill your bucket every day. Sitting in
Yeah.
front of a computer looking for a job 8 hours a day is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's not going to work.
Yep.
So
Marie, believe it or not, and you knew that this was going to go really fast. We're at the bottom of the hour, actually a little past. Where can people find you? Can they reach out to you? Is that all right?
sure, absolutely. If anyone wants some help with their resume, who is looking for opportunities, who has opportunities and they need me to find them people, for sure, reach out to me. If you could throw my email into the chat, that'd be great. Feel free to send me an email, text me. My phone number is, if you want to jot this down, it's 609-436-9851. Took me a while to remember that one, but just feel free to text me on that number. I'll get the text right away, and we can certainly work together for sure.
Excellent. And we will definitely make sure we put that all in the comments as well so people can follow up on that. So
Great.
thank you so much for joining
You're
us today,
welcome.
Marie. I
Thank
really
you for the
appreciate it.
opportunity, and I apologize if I talk too fast. It's too much coffee.
It works for me. We're from the same area. We're cut from the same breed. So also, if anyone's looking to really find their authentic self and storytelling, we're actually doing a lunch and learn on Tuesday, which will start to talk about finding your authentic self and how to look at that and know. So please join us on Tuesday. That's free. And follow E equals Y to learn more about the E3 leadership code we talked about. And we wish everyone good luck in their journeys. And Marie, again, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Great talk.